Is there a bias against CAM? Um, Exploring a recent article published in JAMA in breast cancer. Hi there, my name is Dr. Walter Lemmo, naturopathic physician with a practice solely focused in cancer care for over 20 years and in clinical practice for 27 years. Over the weekend, I was forwarded an article regarding that was published in JAMA, and it was looking at complementary and alternative medicine use patterns in breast cancer. They were looking at like a database, and they were looking at just over 2.1 million women. The ages were from 52 to 71, and they were just looking at people receiving standard of care, those doing complementary alternative only, and those combining the two world. So the vast majority, so the biggest group, so 97.6% of patients in this cohort received standard of care treatment only. And then less than 0.1%, so it's 273, received only CAM alone. And then another less than 0.1%, so 568, received a combination of the two worlds. Remember, this is an association or linked. These people were not guided. They were just doing this on their own accord. So, for example, they weren't seeing, say, somebody like myself. And what they basically noticed is that those who did more standard of care, looking at 5-year survivals, had a survival advantage. They lived longer as compared to, say, those who did not. And then when you're looking at the group that did complementary and alternative medicine, they also forgo even like endocrine treatments, like say tamoxifen and anastrozole, letrozole, and then when you look at the group that combined the two worlds, they weren't as bad as the complementary alternative, but again, their survival was less. So when you look at this paper and its link, you're like, oh, okay, like those who say, for example, did combining of the two worlds, it's not that good, right? But what's unfortunate in this is that there really isn't any details explaining why, who these people are seeing or what they're doing. They're just looking at patterns. So, for example, a colleague was just analyzing some of the statistics that were available. So a lot of these groups that were, say, combining the two worlds were younger. And we know, like, say, younger patients could be higher risk. There are more triple negatives. They could be more HER2 expressed, which are higher risk compared to, say, postmetal populations. That could explain things alone, right? And then you're looking at, okay, maybe this group that's combining the two worlds is having a really tough time with treatment. They are like they're lowering their dose of their chemotherapy. For example, it's called relative dose intensity, a maximum tolerated dose, which could be impacting the survival, which is why they're choosing on their own to combine the two worlds to tolerate treatment better. The third thing is that there are groups of patients where the treatment not be working well. So, for example, some patients are given chemotherapy first to try to shrink things down so that they can have so the surgeon can have a better job of getting clear margins. It's called neoadjuvant treatment. And that's when you really see what chemotherapy does or doesn't do. So we see patients, for example, that they're seeing us because they're on chemotherapy and that tumor mass isn't shrinking. And if anything, we've seen it was getting worse. So they're incorporating integrative approaches, combining the two worlds, because they were following the recommendations and as the standard of care don't combine, and they're like, well, what I got to lose? It's not working well. So those groups again are what we considered a more poor responder and higher risk group. So these are some of the nuances, and when you see something like this, that's why it's just this big paintbrush. We don't know any of the details behind these things. And again, these are people that are guided on their own from what we know. And so it's not really a clear, really picture to kind of get this level of press. the take home is more, I think, that you could say is that those who are doing more standard of care, which was like, like the vast majority of them, like 98% of them, that, they did better than the other groups. But and these other groups were really small, and which again is also a bit unusual because there's all these statistics showing in breast cancer that 30%, 50%, 70% of patients are combining like the two worlds in some capacity. To see such a small number again makes you scratch your head and going, okay, who are these people, and so I think, like anything, it's not like cause and effect. It's interesting information, and but it doesn't really answer a lot of questions, and in terms of the details of these cases, like for example these endocrine treatment like the letrozole, the anastrozole, tamoxifen. So, why some women drop it? Side effects are bad, they're brutal for them, and they just kind of end up stopping, which can easily slant a curve in terms of of survival, and so, and there's all these unique details. So anyways, I thought I'd kind of just do my best to highlight this subject area, and if there's any questions, just let me know and I'll do my best to answer.